In 1973, Elvis went to the hospital ER with food poisoning. In the waiting room, he sat next to a young father named Tom, whose son was in emergency surgery. For 5 hours, they talked. Two strangers sharing fear. Elvis never revealed who he was. When the surgery succeeded, Tom said, "I don't know you, but thank you." This is the story of how shared pain makes strangers into brothers. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in November 1973. Elvis woke at Graceland with severe abdominal pain, vomiting, cold sweats, classic food poisoning symptoms. His doctor was called, assessed the situation, and insisted Elvis go to the hospital immediately for IV fluids and monitoring. Elvis resisted. "I can't go to a hospital. There'll be press, fans, chaos." "Then you'll go to Baptist Memorial's private entrance," the doctor said firmly. "ER intake, get treated, home in a few hours, but you're dehydrated and this could get serious. You're going." They arrived at Baptist Memorial Hospital at 3:45 a.m., using the staff entrance to avoid attention. Elvis wore a baseball cap, sunglasses despite the hour, and simple clothes. He looked like any other sick patient stumbling into an ER in the middle of the night. The intake nurse took his information. Elvis gave a fake name, John Aaron, and directed him to wait. "Doctor will see you as soon as possible. We're short-staffed tonight and have emergency surgeries running. Might be a couple hours." Elvis nodded and made his way to the waiting room. It was the standard hospital waiting area. Harsh fluorescent lights, uncomfortable plastic chairs, magazines from 6 months ago, and the particular smell that all hospitals have, the smell of antiseptic trying to cover fear. There were a few other people waiting, an elderly woman with her daughter, a man holding an ice pack to his hand, and in the corner, a young man in his late 20s, hunched forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. Elvis sat 2 chairs away from the young man, keeping distance, hoping to be invisible, just wanting this night to be over. Then the young man started crying. Not loud, dramatic crying, quiet, desperate crying, the kind that comes from a place too deep for noise. Elvis glanced over. The man was trying to hold it together, shoulders shaking slightly, hands covering his face. Elvis knew he should probably look away, give the man privacy in his pain. But something in Elvis, maybe the late hour, maybe his own discomfort making him empathetic, maybe just basic human decency, wouldn't let him ignore another person breaking down 3 feet away. "You okay?" Elvis asked quietly. The young man looked up, embarrassed, wiping his eyes quickly. "Sorry, I'm fine. Just long night." "I get that. You waiting on someone?" The man hesitated. Then the fear and exhaustion made him honest. "My son. He's 6 years old. Emergency appendectomy, appendix ruptured. They rushed him into surgery 2 hours ago. Said it'll be another 3 hours at least. But they also said," his voice cracked, "they said if the infection spread too far, there could be complications. He might..." He couldn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. "What's his name?" Elvis asked. Mikey. He's 6. He just turned 6 last month. He's my whole world. His mom died when he was 2. Cancer. It's just been him and me for 4 years. If something happens to him..." Tom started crying again, unable to control it anymore. Elvis moved to the chair directly next to Tom, put a hand on his shoulder. Didn't say anything for a moment, just presence. Just acknowledgement that this pain was real and deserved to be witnessed. "I'm Tom," the young man said, wiping his eyes again. "Tom Sullivan. I'm..." Elvis paused for just a fraction of a second. John Aaron." "Thank you for not pretending everything's fine," Tom said. "Everyone keeps saying kids are resilient and doctors are great and it'll be okay. But nobody's saying what I'm actually feeling, that I'm terrified, that I might lose the only person I have left, that I don't know how to breathe right now." "You don't have to pretend with me," Elvis said. "Fear is honest. Sometimes it's the only honest thing." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Tom asked, "You here for yourself?" "Food poisoning. Nothing serious. Just need some fluids, some anti-nausea medication. I'll be fine by morning." "That's good. At least one of us isn't looking at the worst night of our lives." "I've had some bad nights," Elvis said quietly. "Different kinds of bad. But I understand terror. I understand not being able to breathe because you might lose what matters most." Tom looked at Elvis. Really looked. saw something in the stranger's face that suggested he did understand, that this wasn't just polite sympathy. Over the next 5 hours, Tom and Elvis talked about everything and nothing, about loss and fear and how you survive when the worst happens, about children and responsibility and the weight of being someone's entire world. Tom told Elvis about his wife Sarah, about watching cancer take her piece by piece, about becoming a single father at 24 with no idea what he was doing. But Mikey made it worth it. Every hard day, every moment I wanted to give up. I'd look at him and remember that Sarah left him with me because she trusted me to keep going. And I have. Until tonight. Tonight I don't know if I can keep going if he... You can, Elvis said firmly. Not because you're strong, because you don't have a choice. That's what love is. It takes away your choice to quit. You'll keep going because Mikey needs you to, just like you kept going after Sarah because he needed you then. How do you know? Tom asked. About loss? You said you've had bad nights? Elvis was quiet for a long moment. Then, because it was 5 a.m. and he was tired, and this stranger's pain had opened something in him. I lost my mother when I was 23. I was in the Army. Got emergency leave. Sat with her in the hospital, held her hand while she died. And then I had to keep going. Had to go back to the Army, had to continue my career, had to live in a world where my mama wasn't in it anymore. And I've spent every day since then carrying that hole. But I keep going. Because that's what you do. You carry the hole and you keep going. Tom nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. Your mother, were you close? She was everything. My best friend, my supporter, the only person who loved me before I was somebody. After she died, I had millions of people who loved me, but none of it meant what her love meant, because hers was first. Hers was real. That's how I feel about Sarah, Tom said. I've dated since she died. People are kind, but it's not the same. She knew me when I was nobody going nowhere. She believed in me anyway. That's the love you don't replace. No, Elvis agreed quietly. You don't replace it. You just learn to live with the missing piece. They sat in silence again, two men bound by loss and fear and the particular loneliness of waiting rooms at 5 a.m. Around 6:30 a.m., a nurse finally called Elvis's fake name. John Aaron? Elvis stood up. That's me. Tom grabbed his hand. Thank you for sitting with me, for not making me be alone with this. You're going to be fine, Elvis said. Mikey's going to be fine. The surgery will work and you'll have another 50 years of being his dad. But even if the worst happens, which it won't, you'll survive it. Because that's what we do. We survive for the people who need us. Elvis followed the nurse to an examination room. He was treated quickly. IV fluids, anti-nausea medication, monitoring for an hour. By 8 a.m., he was cleared to leave. But instead of leaving immediately, Elvis went back to the waiting room. Tom was still there, now pacing, even more anxious as the surgery time extended longer than expected. Elvis sat back down. Still waiting? Tom looked at him with surprise and gratitude. You're still here? I thought you'd be gone. Wanted to make sure Mikey's okay. You mind if I wait with you? Tom's eyes filled with tears again. You don't have to do that. I know, but I'm going to. At 9:15 a.m., a surgeon finally emerged. Mr. Sullivan? Tom jumped up, Elvis beside him. That's me. How is he? Michael came through surgery successfully. The appendix had ruptured, but we cleaned out the infection, and there's no sign of peritonitis spreading. He's going to need antibiotics and monitoring, but he should make a full recovery. Tom collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief. The surgeon patted his shoulder. You can see him in about 30 minutes. He's in recovery now. After the surgeon left, Tom looked at Elvis. This stranger who'd sat with him for 6 hours, who'd shared his own losses, who'd come back after being treated just to make sure Tom wasn't alone. I don't know who you are, Tom said. I don't know what you do or where you're from or anything about you except your name might not actually be John Aaron. But you saved me tonight. Not Mikey. The doctors did that. But me. You saved me from drowning in fear alone. And I'll never forget that. Elvis pulled off his sunglasses for the first time that night. Tom's eyes widened as recognition dawned. You're Elvis Presley. I'm also just a guy who lost his mama and knows what it feels like to sit in hospitals, terrified of losing what matters most. Tonight, I wasn't Elvis Presley. I was just John, sitting with a father who needed someone to understand. Why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't need Elvis Presley. You needed a person, and that's what I gave you. Just person to person. No fame, no performance, just two people who understand loss, helping each other through fear. Tom stood up and hugged Elvis. A real hug, the kind you give someone who's genuinely helped you survive something. Thank you, Tom whispered, not for being Elvis Presley, for being human with me. Thank you for letting me, Elvis said, for reminding me that underneath everything, I'm still just a person who knows pain. That's not something I get to be very often. Elvis left Baptist Memorial Hospital at 9:30 a.m. He made his people swear they'd never tell the press about this night. It wasn't a story for public consumption. It was private, sacred. Tom Sullivan never sold the story either. He kept it to himself for years, a secret treasure, the night Elvis Presley sat with him in a waiting room and was just human. But after Elvis died in 1977, Tom wrote a letter to the Memphis newspaper. Not for publicity. Just to share what Elvis had been when nobody was watching. In November 1973, when my son was in emergency surgery, Elvis Presley sat with me in a hospital waiting room for 6 hours. He didn't tell me who he was. He just listened to my fear and shared his own loss. He was human with me when he could have been elsewhere doing important Elvis things. When my son survived, Elvis told me, "We survive for the people who need us." Those words have carried me through every hard day since. This is the Elvis I want people to remember. Not just the performer, but the person who understood pain and didn't turn away from others experiencing it. The letter was published on August 17, 1977, the day after Elvis's death. It was reprinted in newspapers across the country. People who'd only known Elvis as a superstar suddenly saw this other side, the man who sat in waiting rooms with terrified fathers and shared his own grief to make theirs feel less lonely. The story influenced how Baptist Memorial Hospital trained their staff. Remember the Elvis principle, supervisors would tell new nurses. Every person in a waiting room is just a person. Famous or not, rich or poor, they're all scared. They all need someone to witness their fear without judgment. Be that person. The story also became meaningful to people dealing with loss and medical fear. If Elvis could sit in a waiting room and be afraid, then it's okay for me to be afraid, became a common refrain. If Elvis could share his pain with a stranger to help them through theirs, then maybe I can too. Tom Sullivan's son, Michael, grew up healthy and strong. Tom told him the story when he was old enough to understand. Elvis Presley saved your dad's sanity the night you almost died, not by being famous, by being honest about fear and loss. Michael Sullivan became an ER doctor, partly inspired by that night. If Elvis could sit with strangers in their darkest moments, Michael said, then I can do that as my life's work. Presence in pain matters. Witnessing fear without judgment matters. Being human with people when they need it most, that's what healing is. Today, there's a small plaque in Baptist Memorial Hospital's ER waiting room. In memory of all who wait, worry, and find strength in strangers. Shared pain makes us family. Hospital staff say it's inspired by the night Elvis sat with Tom Sullivan, though the hospital doesn't officially confirm that. But patients who sit in that waiting room and see that plaque often feel a little less alone, a little more understood, a little more human in a place that can make you feel like just a diagnosis or a crisis. That's Elvis's gift that night, not his fame, not his talent, his humanity. His willingness to sit with someone else's pain and say, I understand, I've been afraid too, you're not alone. Tom Sullivan died in 2019 at age 76. In his obituary, his family wrote, Tom taught us that famous people are still just people. That pain connects us all. That the greatest gift you can give someone in crisis is your honest presence. He learned these lessons from a stranger in a waiting room who turned out to be Elvis Presley, but who that night was just John, a man who understood loss and wasn't afraid to be human about it. At Tom's funeral, his son Michael read from his father's journal, an entry from November 1973. Tonight I learned that compassion doesn't require knowing someone's name or story. It just requires being willing to sit with their pain without trying to fix it or dismiss it. A stranger sat with me for 6 hours while my son fought for his life. He shared his own losses. He made my fear feel less isolating. Turned out he was one of the most famous people on earth, but that night he was just a person who understood pain. And that's what I needed. Not fame, not performance, just humanity. I'll never forget it, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to give that same gift to others, honest presence in their darkest moments. That's the legacy of the waiting room. Not a dramatic story, not a performance, just two men sitting in uncomfortable plastic chairs at ungodly hours of the morning, sharing fear and loss and the particular loneliness of hospitals. Elvis did that hundreds of times in his life, showed up as human when he could have shown up as star. Sat with pain instead of performing above it. Reminded people that underneath everything, we're all just scared humans, hoping the people we love survive the night. The waiting room proves it. The 6 hours with Tom prove it. The willingness to be John Aaron instead of Elvis Presley proves it. Shared pain makes strangers into brothers. Honest fear creates honest connection. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just sit with someone and say, I understand. I've been terrified too. You're not alone in this. Elvis said that in a hospital waiting room at 5 a.m. to a stranger who needed to hear it. And because he did, that stranger survived the worst night of his life a little less alone, a little more understood, a little more human. That's not Elvis the King. That's Elvis the person. And that person might be the most important thing he ever was. If this story of waiting rooms, shared fear, and human connection moved you, subscribe and share it. When did a stranger's kindness get you through something terrible? Let us know in the comments. Hit that notification bell for more true stories about the humanity that connects us all.